Okay, so we're going through Michi's book, and we're getting through what he called the beginner level stuff, and which I really think is really the meat of the book and the most I think helpful, even for intermediates or advanced level players, to go through this stuff and sort of reorient their thinking. So I wanted to summarize the main points of what we've gotten so far. And then we're going to get into some of his what he called more advanced level or intermediate level, and then advanced level things. So just to summarize, and part of my doing this is he's organized books into proverbs. I'm sorry, he's organized his ideas into proverbs, which are useful, but yeah, there are too many of them to really memorize them. So I try to consolidate them a little bit and rearrange them and give another view of them. They're the same ideas, but just reorganized. So and so I've summarized him here on this Excel spreadsheet where and actually Proverbs converted to Proverb 0 is hit, which Michi didn't mention at all, but in the opening. There are 3 quadrants of the board where you're always going to hit if you have the chance, with one notable exception, the 3-1 play. But and then the points priority. Michi mentioned that early on that the most important point is 5 point. In fact, that's his proverb 1 is the most important point is the 5 point. And so but to me, it's just as easy to say, okay, yeah, 5 point is the most important, but the 4 point is important too. And it's more important than the bar point, which people often get confused. And then you can make either the offensive point or the defensive point, in which one you want to do. And well, other things the way it's equal is other things being equal, you're going to make your own 5 point versus the defensive 5 point, the offensive 4 versus defensive 4, etc. Okay, so the next one was fight for a good point, particularly the 5 point. And we've seen that all the time. In fact, we'll go over more today, where if you roll today's topic is if you roll an ace, look to slot the 5 point, and so that's part of fighting for the good point. And if your opponent is on the one of the good points, you're going to try to knock them off, and that's a strong option, assuming that you can't do something else that's strong. Okay. And then, with all these rules, there's a caveat. So I say, other things being equal, the 5 offensive points are better than defensive points, but they're not always equal. So yeah, fighting for a good point is a good thing to do, but if you can make a point, that's usually better than hitting loose. So those are 2 separate proverbs for Michi, but I put them both together. Make an outfield point. And that sort of goes in with the making a point is better than hitting loose. If you make an outfield point, you usually want to do that rather than hitting loose and the inner board. On stack is a good a proverb. And we will go over a little bit of that today in a different way. The tiger play, and this is actually what Michi is, I think, most famous in this book for is, the tiger play is a double hit, and he's identified the weak tiger, the strong tiger, and the double tiger. Where the double tiger being where you're hitting with leaving 2 blots in the inner board. Then attacking with 8 is weak, but attacking with 10 is strong. And that's a very good thing to remember, particularly in your strategy, and it goes out through the beginning and to the middle game. And we looked at examples in the early game, but and carrying on to the middle game too. If you have checkers in the zone, then that's a good sign that you should be attacking. And if you don't, probably attacking is not the right move. But look to play something more running or safe or whatever. Then the last one is the idea of if you have strip points, you place your blots in front of those if you have to. Assume you have to make a blot. Leave a blot, but if that's where you want to do it, and then you avoid stack points, and we saw that in the splitting where you had the what do you call the blitzing structure. Okay, so that's kind of the first group. And then we went over some chapters, and I did sort of this diagram, some of his proverbs relating to splitting, when to split and when not to split. And so my suggestion was that whenever you get an opportunity to split, or you think you might split, or it would be a good time to split, then go through these splitting rules, which are most all derived from Michi's rules too. And I divided the primary and secondary. And the primary is if your opponent has 10 more checkers in the zone, that's a sign not to split. Michi didn't exactly say that, but he identified a blitzing structure where you have 10 or more checkers in the zone and you have a stacked 8 and 6 point. Usually the 1 is enough, but it's certainly stronger if you have both of these situations. And then you have signs to split. Your black checkers are well blocked, and what Michi called that splitting against the prime. But I've modified it slightly different to saying basically if you're 5 and 6 points, like if your opponent has the 8 point and the bar point made, then you need to split to give yourself a chance to hop out and not get primed. If your opponent has an advanced anchor, that means you really need to get an advanced anchor. If you don't have, if your opponent has an advanced anchor, you're still on 8 point, that's a problem. Okay, and then Michi didn't really. Michi mentioned the stripped 8 point, which kind of in general you want to place your blocks on a stripped point. So if your opponent stripped it, I had a few problems with that. The 6-4 opening doesn't work that well because you don't really. That's the case where you have a stripped 8 and you don't do it, and you shouldn't split in front of that. But it's still it often helps anyway. What Michi didn't say, and I will say, is sort of a precursor to getting, before your opponent gets the advanced anchor. If he's split, then it's usually a good time to split as well. You should be looking more to split. Okay, so those are kind of my sort of consolidations of Michi's main proverbs, and hopefully they help you think about them and combine things, and hopefully you can remember them easier. The one we're going to go over today is part of the what he called the 3 tips on specific numbers, and every time you roll an ace, and so when we're looking at today is every time you roll an ace, think of slotting. And so, oops, I already did this one. This one, yeah. And so the 2-1 opening is the typical one, and actually Michi in a sort of a separate section, not related to this, goes through all the openings where you have a 1. And if we look at this, splitting is fine, but it's just as good to slot on the openings. Obviously, okay, if we have a 3-1, we're going to make the 5 point, and that's simple. A 4-1
split.
Generally, splitting is better, but opening with the slot isn't bad either. With a 5-1, again, typically you're going to split, but opening with a slot is not bad either. And actually, I should say, on the 4-1. I played Michi 2 or 3 times in the past year. He's been to Florida, and I played him in a tournament once. And 3 times his opening roll was a 4-1. Every one of those 3 times he played the slotting play, even though it's actually gives it says it's the weaker play. So if it's good enough for Michi, it's probably good enough for the rest of us too. And then the 6-1 is obviously you're going to make the bar point, and there's no slotting. So just in general, the next one. I find that if you the slide play is good to be aware of because people are reluctant to do it because you're putting a block down right in front of your opponents. And so, and if you get hit, you go back a long way. But there are reasons for doing it, and they're in the Proverbs themselves. What are the main Proverbs you talk about that would tell you, okay, it's a good idea to slot the 5 from 6 to 5? Does anyone remember those? I'll put them up.
Yeah, 5 for the point.
5 for, that's one, yeah. And there's one more. I'll give you a hint, it's on that line.
Yeah.
Break them out.
Yeah, unstacking.
Unstack, yeah. I call it unstacking.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you might come up with these, this idea. So this idea of every time you roll one look to slide is kind of a derivative of some other things. Unstacking, fighting for the good point. Now we do, in cases like this, we saw where the 2 on the opening is just as good whether you split or whether you slot. What about this one? And again,
It's better to slot.
Yeah, and why is that? I'll put the
Because you have a checker on the 11 and you have a lot of chances to make the point.
okay. But remember, every time you think about splitting, or you should consider the splitting rules. And so, in this situation, okay, signs not to split. The opponent has 10 checkers in the zone and has stacked the 6 and 8. Well, we've got 10 checkers in the zone and he's got the 6 points stacked. That's a pretty strong sign that you shouldn't split. And so in that case, splitting is, not quite a blunder, but it's a pretty big error. It's the kind of thing that you shouldn't, you don't want to make early on.
Right.
Now, let's see. Let's go to the next example.
Hey, Gary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
could you say a few words about match play? I mean, if you're ahead, then you want to slot. I'm sorry, if you're ahead, maybe you want to split. If you're behind and you need to catch up, you want to slot.
Yeah.
Could you say a few words about that?
Yeah. Generally, well, most of the time you want to make what you consider the best play, and not worry too much about match play. Certain times, though, for instance, if you're behind, you're going to want to play more aggressively. So, I would look to slotting more, hitting more. You're looking to get gammons and things like that. So if you've got to make up ground, you want to play more aggressively. So these typically, particularly in what are called gammon go and gammon save situations. So I would look to that, and then for like the opening 2-1 is a little bit more aggressive play, and that you're sliding the point that you want, and that you're risking a lot to get it. But if you do get it, it's the reward is big. So I almost always slot with an opening 2-1. Always slot when I'm behind, or I need to gammon, and then when I'm not, if I'm way ahead, I will usually split with an opening 2-1. So that's kind of an example. Okay. Okay, so this one. What do we think about here with the 2-1?
I'd split since he split.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to look at this. the sliding play is not so great here. And mostly because you're giving black a double shot at you. And you really don't, which you really don't want. I mean, you don't want to get hit here. But when you just give them the single direct shot, the 4, that's not so bad. Here you're giving him at least 20 rolls that hit you. You also have, it also coincides with on the splitting rules, your opponent has split, and so that's kind of a sign to that you should split as well. Yeah, and finally, one of the here we haven't seen this one before, where you would take your back checker and grow it up 3. But the reason that this is just as good as what the more typical play is that now you've given your opponents a number of rolls, the 6-4 to hit you there, and also the 6-3 and the 5-4 that hit you. So now you're giving them 6 rolls to hit you up there. So that makes this a much less effective play, and basically playing it safe is just as good. Okay. Okay, all right, it looks like I already went through these. This is the opening 4-1 roll. So again, whenever you get a roll or 1, you might look to split. Now let me see if this, to Jim's question. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, here, this came in, when we looked at it before, it was a small error to do this. Now that it's showing an even play. Basically, it's an even play. I think this has to do with the match, whether you're playing a match or not. Yeah. So I'm not really sure why that is. 13, 14 gammons, 13, 13 gammons. I guess it's because of the gammons that you give up. I'm not sure. In any case, but as I said, Michi I played a couple times, and each time he's opened it with a 4-1, he's done this. He's done this one, the 1 down and then slotting, even though
Gary?
it was there. Yeah.
Could that be a reflection of how confident he is in the rest of his game?
Yeah, it may be. Yeah, because if you're playing, but I don't know whether he does this against. I mean, I know he's done it against me. I don't know if he's done it against, and he's certainly a better player than me. But I don't know if he does that against people like Michi or Steve Sachs or the other top level players. So, but I'm not sure why when you're playing the match, it's worse than if you're playing like a money game, where it's
Especially if you look at the score there, when you had to set the match, there was an 11-point match at 0-0. So it's the first game of the match.
Yeah, that typically that's pretty much the same as a money game. All right, I think this was 5-1. Yeah, so we've gone over this. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that chapter. It's a pretty simple chapter with simple ideas, but they do tie in with the splitting, and the other proverbs were of unstacking and slotting and fighting for the good point. So, okay, so the rest of the time I want to go over things that we've already done and try to refresh everyone on that and try to look at how to assess priorities. We've got all these proverbs, but now how do you decide what to do when you have competing priorities? So let's take a look at this one. And take a look at it. We'll see what your thoughts are on it. And again, the question is, what's the right move, and what proverbs are you relying on?
I would make the 3-point.
And let me change the score to 0. Okay, who said, Richard, you said the 3-point? Or was that somebody else?
Richard said it, but I would
Oh, yeah,
agree.
yeah, no, it was me. I
Okay.
turned my microphone off.
Okay,
Yeah, I said make the 3-point. And I don't know which proverb. Something about making a point is better than hitting, but you're not going to hit anyway, so. Or you could, but
yes.
it doesn't really. I wouldn't.
Okay, anyone
consider it.
else?
Well, I'd agree. I don't know the proverb, but there's just nothing else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and so you're going to do 8-3. Okay. Well, let's look at some of the other things that we have. So the proverbs are, okay, making a point. Yeah. Making a point is better than hitting loose, which we can't hit loose, but anyway, you do make a point.
Well, you could hit the 1 loose.
I'm sorry.
You could hit the, you could hit the 1 loose.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Well, let's look and we'll work backwards on it. The right play is to come down, making the outfield point, which is a separate proverb of making the outfield point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I but at the same time, we're looking at this play strips the midpoint. So
Yeah.
this is a tricky one in that you're stripping the midpoint, which is we'd like to unstack the midpoint, which we did, but we'd also like to leave a spare. So what else is there that helps? I mean, this is not tricky, but one of the proverbs is, okay, fight for the good point. Typically that means we're gonna hit someone loose on it or slot it. Now here's a case where if you move a point, a blot that you've from a point that you slotted, you're effectively not fighting for it anymore. So really part of the answer here is fighting for the good point. You're going to keep that checker there because it's still the good point to make.
But Gary, isn't the 9-11 point also from an outfield perspective pretty good points to have?
Yeah. Well, they're all good points to have. And in fact, in a later chapter, Michi points out, he goes into the relative strengths of each of these points. And he says, and he points out that, okay, the 9-point is best for making as a builder, but the 11-point is actually best for containment. So if you have a single checker you want to contain, that's, you want that point.
What does it say about if it's unlimited games? You got match selected there.
It's the same thing. Typically they are the same. When you're starting the opening play of the match, and typically most plays are the same, even at varying match scores. So I would only look at that if you have a chance to play aggressively versus not. Is it if you're behind, play more aggressively, and if you're ahead, play a little bit safer.
Well, the other thing is now you've got 10 checkers in the zone, so that helps.
Yeah, that's a good point. You've got 11 checkers in the zone actually after the roll, and your opponent has 2 blots here and a blot there. So if black can't clean up his checkers, you've got some opportunities to do some damage here for black. So that's going to be part of it as well. And this play, it's not a bad play. I mean, there are some what do we see drawbacks to this play?
Well, the 3's not a great point.
3 is not a great point. But look, It's stripped, you're stripped at the
You
8.
strip the 8, right?
So it's hard to develop things from here.
Hmm.
And so that's a weakness. Okay, let's not spend too much time on that one. Let me find,
Interesting.
I'd like to do get through a couple of these.
Cool.
Five one.
13, 8, 6, 5. Man,
Yeah, here's one where nothing looks very promising. And so you kind of, you got to go through the whole list of proverbs and see what, what can you do? And so, okay, 13, 8, 6, 5. Okay, you're unstacking here, but you're kind of restacking there. So that doesn't help much. 6 to 5 is, we just went over that. Look, this is a chance to split, or not to slot. You've got covers here and here, in addition to the 8 coming down. So that's, that's good.
you have 10 checkers in the zone.
You'll get, you'll get 10 checkers in the zone. Always
It is a
good.
bit, isn't the converse of that the opponent has 10 checkers in the zone and you have a checker on the 21 point? I mean, you're really subject to getting attacked there. If you
That's a good point. This is, there's something to be said for fighting for the good point, and there's another thing to be said for, putting yourself out there to get hammered.
Well, but at the same time, he can either hit you on his infield or hit you in your infield. So he's got to
Yeah.
make a choice. Generally, make a choice, and you're down.
but he has so many good numbers. If you slot the 5, he's got a lot of great numbers.
But that's always the case.
Also, if you slot the 5, he's gonna want to fight for it. He'll hit loose to keep you from getting it.
What about 11, 6, 21, 20? Just to slot that 20.
Okay, well, that's, okay, yeah, you're sliding a point that you want, although I guess you're upgrading your point, the 5 point being better than the 4. This one, 11 to 6, you're stacking your 6 point even further.
I gotcha.
So that's usually not a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing too is he hasn't split, so he doesn't, a 6-4 is the only thing he got that hits that one. That's only, 2 rolls out of 36. So it's, there's not a great compelling reason to move this one. Okay, so let's look at the answer and kind of work backwards and see, what the right play was. So the best play is hopping over the prime and sliding. So sliding, we know why that's what the advantages are to that. Unstacking, and we're making a good point. He's only got a direct 4, which, obviously if he hits it, he'll take it. Notice also that this is also a 4.
Yeah.
And we've duplicated the 4s.
Yeah.
And so with a 4, black is going to hit that one and not hit that one, unless he gets double 4s, of course. So, you kind of like going back when your opponent has made this, it's often right to hop over that prime with one of your checkers if you don't have anything else constructive to do. So the way to probably look at this is to say, okay, we want to hop over this prime with our 5, and now what's our best one? Okay, well, just go through, you can't move that one. So coming out 24 to 23 is rarely the right move. The only time it's the right move is when your opponent has the bar point but not the 8 point. So that's usually wrong. And every time you think that it's right, you think again, because it's probably wrong. You could slot the bar point, which would be silly, giving him a direct 6 and stripping your 8. You could move the 11 to 10, that would be okay, I guess. So, and you can't move that one. So really, and with this one, 11 to 10 doesn't accomplish anything. So you really, your choices are moving 16 to 15 and 6 to 5. And so between those two, 6 to 5, you should be able to see the 6 to 5 is going to be better. It slots the point you want, it unstacks, and it's got, covers, direct covers from the 6 and a 3 are direct cover, and an 8 is an indirect cover. And what is this? This is an 11 is also an indirect cover. So between moving this up and that down, that should be easy to figure out that sliding is the right play. So,
And you replicate the 4s.
and duplicate. Duplicate. And so the other plays, this is the third, I didn't put it in order. Coming down and sliding is better, but again, you're not really you're unstacking the midpoint, but you're stacking the 8 point, which is not terrible, but okay. So let's do another one. I wanted to get through 5 or 6 of these. We're on 3 now. Okay, so what are the key features here that we've got?
He's made a point and an advanced anchor.
Yes. The advanced anchor should ring a bell for everyone.
Well, what you said before is you want to split when your opponent's made a advanced anchor, but you're already split here.
Well, yeah, that's a sign that you should split. And
Isn't one of them?
but there, well, okay, but yeah, actually, this is where Michi made it very explicit on something that I sort of took it out a little bit, but I didn't mean to ignore it. So
Meet an anchor with an anchor?
yes,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Michi's proverb was counter an advanced anchor with an advanced anchor, and the examples, and then so that's a sign that if you haven't split, you should split. But literally, what it also means is that if your opponent has an advanced anchor, and now you have a chance to get, well, the 3 point is not the best advanced anchor, but you have a chance to get an advanced anchor, you should really take it. So our first step is going to be 24-22. And so then, and that follows directly from a proverb. And then the 3, those 3s are blocked, can't do that. We either come down, this one is blocked, or go 6 to 3.
And 3 point anchor, an anchor on 3 point at this point is better than waiting to try to do the 5, particularly since he's already made the 4.
Yeah.
Burn the hand.
Yeah, keep in mind too that if you're, and this is not a proverb, this is sort of getting more to not the opening play, but the middle game, is if your opponent has a point and he has an anchor, he's got much more liberty to hit loose and to cause you trouble, because he has the better board, and if he happens to get hit back, he's got an anchor to come in. And basically, we got nothing going on here. White has nothing going on here. So
Yeah.
okay. So the question is, this you should see. You must make that anchor, and then the question is, what do you do with the 3? And this one, because your opponent has the better board, and you're not going to really want to get hit. There's no way you can prime him with the 5 point. That's part of the reason that the 5 point is so strong. So there's really no good reason to bring down 13 to 10, the second best play. So you might as well start. You've gotten a hold again. You might as well start making your board, because at some point, what you're hoping for is that black will have to break his anchor. Maybe you can hit him, and so it's time to start building your board. So even though you're unstacking your checker and going to the 3-point is not necessarily a good point, but there's a lot of play going on before we actually have contact, typically. Okay. Number 4.
I'd say come in on the 1 and bring down to the 10.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and why is that?
I often think of checkers as like how far they have to fall if they fall. And the 10 falls farther than anything else that's loose. So you might as well save it while you can.
Well, there's something to be said for that, but there's also something to be said to looking at Michi's Proverbs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't studied.
There's just too many ways for the, if you come in on the 22-point, there's just too many ways for a blitz to start happening.
Yeah. Well, again, when you're coming in from the bar and you roll an ace, and you already have a checker on the ace, you have a choice whether to split or not to split. And so this is an instant splitting decision, which you will make by how you bring your checker in from the bar. And so if that's the case, then you need to consult the splitting rules. And the splitting rules are, does your opponent have 10 or more checkers in the zone? No, he's got 9. But is it a blitzing structure? Well, yeah, it kind of is. He's got a stacked 6-point. So this kind of tells you, let's look if there's something useful to do without splitting. And then you see, okay, well, the 3, you can make an outfield point. Well, there's a proverb for making an outfield point. So that those things should tell you, okay, you don't split, you make the outfield point. And in fact, it's a pretty big blunder to come in. Now, yeah. I always hated this move because I had the chance to split and I couldn't, and it seems like the wrong idea not to split, because you don't want to stay stuck on the ace point, but it's the right move here, and your opponent is stuck on the ace point. So,
but with that, let me ask a question. But with that said, with playing the 3, if you looked at the other way and said, okay, where can I put besides coming in? Because I can either come in on 1 or 3. Mm-hmm. Conversely, where's a better play for the other number? So if I come in on a 3, except I guess I could go at 21 point, but certainly 13-10 is a good move.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, it makes the outfield point. It covers the block, and it's a good point to have. Not as good as some of the other points, but the main idea here is that you've got a couple of things going on. One is you're splitting in front of a blitzing structure, which is the whole point of learning the splitting rules, when to split, not split. And again, I want to reinforce you're coming in from the bar. You have you rolled an ace, you had a chance to split or not to split. So you always think of those rules. And then again, you can make the outfield point. So the combination of the two, it's you come in on the ace and make the outfield point, to avoid the blitzing structure. Okay. 2 more, and then we'll get to the chouette.
Well,
You go 13 to 5. We go 23,
I like 23-15.
15. Okay, I'm picking 20. I'm picking 13, 5.
Okay, and why?
Fighting for the point,
Right?
unloading.
Unstack.
You are, I had one other one. You're behind in the race. So, yeah, you get past that prime, but you're also running. So, that doesn't help that much. That's my reasoning.
Well, yeah, and actually you got an 8, so there's the old adage, which doesn't, not Michi's book, but it's, if you're heading the race, you race, and if you're not heading the race, don't race. Coming out with either the back checkers to the 16 or the 15 point even means you're even in the race, and so
Yeah.
And hopping over his prime here is sort of a racing move.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's good rationale. None of those are right, however. It's making the 3 point. And
Yay, this is what I thought. So this is good.
yeah. And the reason for doing this is you're first of all, there's the adage make a point rather than hitting loose. And particularly, fighting for the good point is good, but you've got a lot of shots against it, and so that's a problem. Making the point unstacks the 6 and the 8. You've got 2 spares on the 8, so that's helpful. And then it's not the problem with attacking here. Is that you don't have a board yet, and so you might as well start making one. So here, making the 8 point. In fact, anytime you've got 4 on the 8 and you haven't unstacked your 6 and you roll a 5-3, it's almost always right to make the 3 point. Again, barring some other loose hit someplace else, but you need to unstack this. It starts making your board. And black, may or may not be able to get. He's got these 2 checkers here. He may not be able to, unless he rolls an ace. He's not going to make a point. So there'll be some shots at him next time. And so next time, when you get the shots, now you'll have a 2 point board instead of a 1 point board. So that's kind of the rationale behind that one. So. So again, these are tricky because these proverbs aren't crystal clear as to what you do, but they're there, and you kind of have to work through the problems and see what the answer is, and then kind of work backwards and say, hey, there are these other things going on. Okay, last one for the
13-5 on that last one. 13-5 was only a minor error, which is surprising.
But Gary, would you also say, Gary, that, and I'm just curious, as a general rule, that it's a lot tougher to hit on the 5 point when there's a checker on the 4 point, because if your opponent comes in, he's got the potential of making a really great point, as opposed to, say, having a checker on the 5 point and a checker on the 1 point.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point too. I'm not sure how much that makes a difference here, but you're right. He's already slotted the 4. And the 5. So even if he doesn't come in with a 5 or a something 1 to hit, he just needs to come in with a 4 or something like that, and he's still got a good strong anchor. Okay, all right, last one for this session.
Jeez.
Good.
This is a little bit beyond the opening, but still the concepts apply.
Make his 5 point and slot your 4.
Okay.
I'd hit on the 14.
Okay, those are two good plays. I mean, hitting can't be too bad, particularly when we've got this prime and the 5 point. We have a little bit better board.
I don't know, I'd maybe 24-20 and then take 10-8 to give another builder there.
Yeah, and so hitting is always something you have to consider. Making the 5 point is always something you need to consider. And if you do that, what do you do with the 2? Well, you're probably either 10-8 or 6-4.
I agree with Lisa because the 5 point, you're trying to fight for that on the opponent's side, and you're ahead in the race. So you play safe 10-8.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the answer, and it is making the 5 point and coming in. So, and I think making the 5 point is key here to kind of understand what's going on here. What we have is, and so and this sliding the 4 point isn't bad either. Part of this is we're getting a little bit beyond the opening game. So the question I was looking at from if we're in the open is, do you hit out here or you make the 5 point? And on an early opening, we will usually hit because hitting is right in the opening. But we're a little bit beyond the opening, so this is where the hitting you have to rethink it a little bit. So we're going to make the 5 point here. And then we're getting to beyond the opening, and the issue here is what's our game plan here, and our game plan is we have this great prime here, and we're trying to trap, and black is not at the edge of the prime. Black wants to get at the edge of the prime, but he's not, and so we want to kind of preserve that prime. If we make this. And there's nothing black can do. It's all kind of up to us and what we do now, because by making the 5 point, black can't prime us. He also can't attack us. And in fact, all that black can do is kind of, bring it safety his checkers, bring them around and dump them in the infield, and in his home board, until we break something. So. But again, I think the idea here is that if you saw making the 5 point is this really strong move, that was right. And this is where it's tricky, because hitting this checker here, is also puts you in a good position. These are all you're certainly favored after the roll, but there are just downsides to doing that. You might get hit back. And if you get hit back, you've given your opponent the opportunity to build his own prime, or even to keep hitting you if you dance and put you into trouble. Okay, so that's it for the instructional part of it, and we'll now get on to the chouette for whoever wants to play in the chouette. And let me stop recording and I'll stop the recording.